The widow Emma Sawyer was standing in the dusty main street of Downieville, California, holding a wicker basket full of apple pies when the tall rancher first laid eyes on her. And though neither of them knew it yet, that moment in late spring of 1872 would change both their lives forever. Emma had been up since before dawn, her hands raw from kneading dough and peeling apples until her fingers ached. The small cabin she shared with her young son felt emptier every day, the absence of her late husband James, a wound that refused to heal even after 2 years. But grief did not pay bills or put food on the table, and so she baked. She baked until the tiny kitchen was thick with the smell of cinnamon and butter, until her back screamed in protest, until she had enough pies to sell in town and maybe, just maybe, enough coins to make it through another week. The morning sun was already heating the wooden boardwalk as she arranged her wares on a small folding table outside the general store. Mr. Peterson, the store owner, had been kind enough to let her set up there twice a week, though she suspected it was more out of pity than generosity. She smoothed down her faded calico dress, wishing she had something nicer to wear, something that did not speak so loudly of her poverty. "Fresh pies," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper at first. She cleared her throat and tried again, louder this time. "Fresh apple pies baked this morning." A few townspeople passed by, offering sympathetic smiles but little else. Mrs. Whitmore stopped to examine the pies, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "How much, dear?" 25 cents each, Emma said, hoping her price was not too high. The apples had cost her dearly at the market. Mrs. Whitmore pursed her lips. "I will give you 15. Emma's heart sank, but she needed the money too desperately to refuse. "Yes, madam, 15 is fine." She had just wrapped the pie in brown paper when she heard the sound of boot heels on wood, steady and purposeful. She looked up and found herself staring into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against his work shirt. His face was weathered from years in the sun, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. He was simply looking at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat. His voice was deep and warm, like whiskey on a cold night. "Those pies for sale?" "Yes, sir," Emma managed, suddenly very aware of the flour still dusting her sleeves. 25 cents each. He looked at the table, counting silently. She had laid out 12 pies, hoping to sell at least half. "I will take them all," he said. Emma blinked. "I am sorry, what?" "All of them," he repeated. "That comes to $3 if my arithmetic is right. But that is, I mean, why would you need 12 pies?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them, and she immediately felt foolish. The corner of his mouth quirked up. "Maybe I like pie. That is a lot of pie for one person. Who says it is just for me? I have ranch hands to feed." He pulled out a leather wallet and counted out 3 silver dollars, placing them on the table. His hands were large and calloused, the hands of a man who worked hard for his living. Emma stared at the money, more than she had made in the past 2 weeks combined. "Are you certain?" "I could not, that is, this seems like charity." His expression shifted, becoming serious. "Madam, if I wanted to give you charity, I would hand you money and walk away. I am buying your pies because I expect them to taste good. Do they?" "Yes," Emma said, lifting her chin. Pride flickered in her chest, warming her. "They do." "Then we have a business transaction, nothing more." He began gathering the pies, stacking them carefully in his arms. "You bake more, I will buy more." "Fair enough." Before she could answer, he was already walking away, his long strides carrying him down the street toward a wagon hitched outside the saloon. Emma watched him go, her mind reeling. She looked down at the $3 silver gleaming in the morning light and felt something she had not experienced in a long while. Hope. The next week, she baked 15 pies instead of 12. She told herself it was because she had the ingredients, that it made sense to maximize her effort. She absolutely was not hoping to see the tall rancher again, to hear that warm voice or look into those impossibly blue eyes. That would be foolish, and Emma Sawyer had learned the hard way that foolishness was a luxury she could not afford. But when she set up her table on Tuesday morning, she found herself scanning the street, her heart jumping at every tall figure in the distance. The morning dragged on. She sold 3 pies to various customers, each transaction feeling somehow disappointing. By noon, the sun was blazing overhead, and she was beginning to think he would not come. Then she heard those familiar boot heels. "Madam," he said, and this time there was definitely a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Looks like you have been busy." "I thought you might come back," Emma said, then immediately regretted her honesty. She sounded desperate. "Your pies were the best my men have tasted in years, maybe ever. Of course I came back." He surveyed the table. "I will take 12 again, but I have a question first." "Yes." "Do you make other kinds? Cherry, perhaps, or peach?" Emma's mind raced. She could get cherries from the Henderson farm, and peaches would be in season soon. "I can make anything you want. Anything." That smile grew wider, transforming his whole face. He was handsome, she realized with a small shock. Not in the polished way of the men in the catalog advertisements, but in a rugged, solid way that suggested dependability. "Within reason," she amended. "I am a baker, not a miracle worker." He laughed, a rich sound that seemed to come from deep in his chest. "Fair enough. How about 6 apple and 6 cherry for next week? I can do that." He paid her for the 12 apple pies she had available, and once again Emma watched him walk away with her baked goods. This time, though, he turned back when he reached his wagon. "Name is Henry Young," he called. "Own the Double Y Ranch north of town." "Emma Sawyer," she replied, and her voice barely carried across the distance, but somehow she knew he heard. Over the following weeks, their Tuesday meetings became a fixture in Emma's life. Henry Young arrived like clockwork at noon, always polite, always ready to buy whatever she had made. The money was enough to keep her and her son fed, with a little extra to save. But more than that, she found herself looking forward to their brief conversations, the way he asked about her week, the small smiles he gave her when she told him about some mishap in her kitchen. One Tuesday in early June, he arrived earlier than usual, while she was still arranging her pies on the table. Her son, 7-year-old Timothy, was with her, helping to smooth the tablecloth. The boy looked up at Henry with wide eyes, taking in his impressive height. "This your son?" Henry asked, his voice gentler than usual. "Yes, this is Timothy. Timothy, say hello to Mr. Young." The boy stuck out his hand with solemn formality. "Pleased to meet you, sir." Henry shook his hand gravely as though Timothy were a grown man. "The pleasure is mine. Your mother is a fine baker." "She makes the best pies in the whole world," Timothy declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "I believe you are right about that." Henry caught Emma's eye, and something in his expression made her cheeks warm. "Mrs. Sawyer, I have been thinking." Oh, her heart began to beat faster. "My ranch hands speak of nothing but your pies on Tuesdays. Some of them have been getting into arguments about who gets seconds. I was wondering if you might be willing to provide more, maybe enough for dessert a few times a week instead of just once." Emma's breath caught. "That would be, how many would you need? Say 20 pies, twice a week. I would pay you $1.50 per dozen, given the regular business." She did the arithmetic quickly in her head. $6 a week was more money than James had made as a ranch hand. It was enough to not just survive, but to live with some comfort. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I can do that." "Excellent, but there is one condition," her hope faltered. "What condition?" "I want you to deliver them to the ranch. Save me the trip into town, and you can see where your hard work is being appreciated." He paused. "I would pay for your travel time, of course. Another $1 per delivery." Emma hesitated. Going to his ranch felt like crossing some invisible line, moving from business transaction to something more personal. But $8 a week was impossible to refuse. "I do not have a wagon. I could lend you one. Or better yet, I could pick you up. Bring you and Timothy out to the ranch, show you around, then take you home after the hands have had their dinner. You could see folks actually enjoying your food." There was something in his voice, an eagerness that went beyond simple business sense. Emma realized with a start that Henry Young wanted her to come to his ranch. Not just her pies, but her. "I suppose that would be acceptable," she said carefully. His face broke into a genuine smile, and she felt an answering warmth bloom in her chest. The first visit to the Double Y Ranch happened 3 days later on a Friday evening. Henry arrived at her cabin in a clean wagon, his hair still damp from washing. He helped her load the pies into the back with careful hands, then lifted Timothy into the wagon seat with easy strength. "Your mother tells me you like horses," Henry said to the boy as they set off. Timothy nodded eagerly. "I have never been on one, though. Mama says we cannot afford it." "Well, we have plenty of horses at the ranch. Maybe your mother would let you sit on one if you promise to be careful." The boy's eyes went wide with excitement. He looked at Emma pleadingly. "Can I, Mama, please?" Emma felt a flutter of anxiety, but the hope in Timothy's face was impossible to deny. "We will see," she said, which in mother language meant probably yes. The ride to the ranch took about 40 minutes, following a dusty road that wound through rolling hills dotted with oak trees. Henry pointed out landmarks as they went, his voice full of pride when he talked about his land. He had inherited the ranch from his father 5 years ago, he explained, and had been building it up ever since. He ran cattle mostly, with some horses on the side. "You run the ranch alone?" Emma asked. "I have 6 hands who live on the property, plus a few others who come during busy seasons. And there is Martha, who has been cooking for us since my father's time. She is getting on in years, though, and the work is hard on her. That is part of why your pies have been such a blessing. Gives her one less thing to worry about." When they crested the final hill, Emma got her first full view of the Double Y Ranch, and her breath caught. The main house was a sprawling 2-story structure made of whitewashed wood, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Behind it stood a large barn, several smaller outbuildings, and a bunkhouse for the ranch hands. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and horses moved in a nearby corral. "It is beautiful," she said softly. Henry looked at her instead of the view. "It could be," he said. "With the right people here, it could be." The ranch hands were a motley group ranging from young men barely out of boyhood to grizzled veterans of the range. They greeted Henry with easy familiarity and tipped their hats respectfully to Emma. A wiry man named Charlie seemed to be the foreman, and he shook her hand with genuine warmth. "Madam, I just want to say that your apple pies have brought more peace to this outfit than 6 months of Henry's threatening. The boys have been working harder just hoping for an extra slice." Emma laughed. "I am glad to be of service." Martha, the cook, was a stout woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, but her eyes were kind. She showed Emma into the kitchen, a large room with a wood stove, a hand pump for water, and more counter space than Emma had ever seen in one place. "This is where you will do your baking when you come," Henry said. "Unless you prefer your own kitchen." Emma looked around the room, imagining the possibilities. "I could make so much more here," she said, but I would not want to intrude on Martha's space." "Intrude?" Martha snorted. "Dear girl, if you want to take over some of my work, you would be doing these old bones a favor. Besides, I am not much for fancy baking. Biscuits and cornbread are more my speed." They ate dinner together in the ranch house dining room, a long table that could seat a dozen people. The hands came in shifts, eating quickly but with evident enjoyment. When Emma brought out the pies, the room fell silent in anticipation. She had made 10 apple and 10 cherry, and she watched anxiously as the first man took a bite, his eyes closed in bliss. "Madam, if you were not already spoken for, I would propose right here and now." "Watch yourself, Tom," Henry said, but there was no real heat in his voice. "Mrs. Sawyer is a respectable widow." Emma felt her cheeks burn, but she could not deny the pleasure that spread through her at the compliment. She glanced at Henry and found him watching her with an expression that made her pulse quicken. After dinner, Henry made good on his promise to Timothy. He led the boy to the corral, where a gentle mare named Daisy was waiting. He lifted Timothy onto her back, keeping one hand on the boy's leg to steady him. "There you go, son. You are a natural." Timothy beamed with pride, and Emma felt her throat tighten. James had never called their son such endearments, had never looked at the boy with such uncomplicated affection. She realized she was seeing what Timothy's life might have been like if his father had been a different kind of man. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Henry drove them home. Timothy fell asleep between them, his head resting against Emma's shoulder. The evening air was cool and sweet with the scent of wild grass. "Thank you for today," Emma said softly. "You made him very happy." "It was my pleasure. He is a good boy. You have raised him well." "It has not been easy since James died." Henry was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask what happened?" Emma took a breath. She did not talk about this often, but something about the growing darkness and Henry's solid presence beside her made the words come easier. "He was thrown from a horse, broke his neck. It was quick, at least. He did not suffer." "I am sorry." "We were not. It was not a happy marriage," she admitted. "James drank too much, spent money we did not have. I stayed because of Timothy and because I had nowhere else to go. Sometimes I feel guilty that I do not miss him more." Henry reached over and took her hand, his palm warm and rough against hers. "You do not owe anyone your grief, Emma, not even a dead husband." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the intimacy of it sent a shiver through her. She did not pull her hand away. "What about you?" she asked. "Have you ever been married?" "No, came close once when I was young and stupid. Girl named Sarah from Sacramento, but she wanted city life, parties, and fancy dresses. I wanted this." He gestured to the darkening landscape around them. "We realized in time that we would make each other miserable, so we parted ways. She married a banker. Last I heard, she was happy." "And you, are you happy?" He squeezed her hand gently. "I am getting there." Over the next few weeks, Emma's visits to the ranch became more frequent. She started baking there twice a week, arriving in the morning and staying through dinner. Martha showed her where everything was kept and shared some of her simpler recipes. The older woman seemed grateful for the company, and Emma discovered she enjoyed having someone to talk to while she worked. Timothy loved the ranch with the fierce passion of childhood. Henry taught him to ride properly, and Charlie showed him how to rope fence posts. The boy flourished under the attention, growing more confident and talkative. Emma watched her son laugh and play in the ranch yard, and felt her heart expand with gratitude. But it was her growing feelings for Henry that occupied most of her thoughts. She found herself watching him when he did not know she was looking, admiring the way he moved with such purpose and grace despite his size. She noticed small things, How he always made sure she had enough water while baking, how he listened when she spoke as though her words truly mattered, how he was gentle with Timothy but never patronizing. One afternoon in mid-July, she was rolling out pie dough in the ranch kitchen when Henry came in, his shirt sleeves rolled up and his face flushed from the heat. "Hot day," he said, pumping himself a glass of water. "Unbearable," Emma agreed. A strand of hair had escaped her bun, and she pushed it back with the heel of her hand, leaving a streak of flour across her forehead. Henry smiled. "You have a little something right here." He stepped closer and gently wiped the flour away with his thumb. The touch was brief, but Emma felt it like a spark. "Thank you," she whispered. They stood there for a moment, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. His hand lingered near her face, and she wondered if he was going to kiss her. She wondered if she wanted him to. Martha bustled in with a basket of vegetables, breaking the moment. "Getting the fixings for supper. Emma, dear, you staying again tonight, if it is no trouble." "Never trouble. It is nice having another woman around." Martha gave Henry a pointed look. "Some company that does not smell like horse and sweat," Henry laughed. "I will go make myself presentable then." After he left, Martha turned to Emma with a knowing smile. "That man is sweet on you in case you have not noticed." Emma's cheeks burned. He buys my pies." "Oh, he buys more than pies, dear. I have known Henry since he was in short pants. I have never seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you. I am a widow with a young son. I have nothing to offer a man like him." Martha put down her basket and took Emma's flour-dusted hands. "You listen to me. You are a strong, capable woman who works hard and loves her child. Any man would be lucky to have you, and Henry Young is no fool. He knows a treasure when he sees one." Emma wanted to believe it, wanted to let herself hope that someone like Henry could truly care for someone like her. But fear held her back, the fear of being hurt again, of losing what little security she had managed to build. That evening, after the ranch hands had eaten their fill of chicken pot pie and Emma's peach cobbler, Henry suggested a walk. Timothy was playing checkers with Charlie in the bunkhouse, so Emma agreed. They strolled toward the creek that ran along the eastern edge of the property, the setting sun painting everything gold. "I have been thinking," Henry said, "about expanding the baking operation." Emma's heart sank a little. Business talk, safe and sensible. "What did you have in mind?" "There are other ranches around here, other hungry cowboys. What if we started supplying them too? I could help you buy ingredients in bulk, make deliveries. You could hire help if you needed it." "That is a generous offer, but why would you want to do all that?" Henry stopped walking and turned to face her. "Because I want you to stay. I want you here at this ranch as often as possible. And if buying pies is the only way I can have that, then I will buy every pie in California." Her heart was pounding now. "Henry, I know it is too soon. I know you might not feel the same way. But I need you to know that it is not just business for me. It has not been for a long time." Emma looked up at his earnest face, at the vulnerability in his eyes, and felt something inside her finally break free. "It is not just business for me either." "It is not," she shook her head. "I think about you all the time. When I am baking, I imagine you tasting what I have made. When I am home, I count the hours until I can see you again. I try to tell myself it is foolish, that I am being impractical, but I cannot seem to stop." "Emma, there is nothing foolish about it." He took her hands, holding them carefully as though they were made of precious glass. "I have been alone for a long time. I told myself I was content, that the ranch was enough. But then you appeared with your basket of pies and your sad eyes, and suddenly I could not remember why I ever thought being alone was acceptable." "I am afraid," she admitted. "My marriage was not kind. The thought of trusting someone again terrifies me. I know, and I will wait as long as you need, but I want you to know my intentions are honorable. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, I want to court you properly. I want to take you to church socials and dance with you at the town gatherings. I want everyone to know that you are the woman who has stolen my heart." Tears pricked at Emma's eyes. "You make it sound so simple." "Maybe it is. Maybe we are the ones making it complicated." She thought about that. Thought about all the reasons she had constructed for keeping her distance, all the fears that had held her back. And then she thought about how she felt when she was with Henry, how safe and valued and seen. She thought about Timothy's laughter echoing across the ranch yard, about Martha's kindness, about the possibility of a life beyond mere survival. "Kiss me," she said. Henry's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." He cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle, and lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was sweet and careful, a question and a promise all at once. Emma rose on her toes, wrapping her arms around his neck, and kissed him back with all the longing she had been holding inside. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Henry rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to marry you someday, Emma Sawyer." "Is that a proposal?" "Not yet. When I propose, it will be special. You will know it is coming." She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "I look forward to it." They walked back to the ranch house hand in hand, and Emma felt as though the whole world had shifted on its axis. Everything looked different now, brighter and full of possibility. The courtship that followed was sweet and deliberate. True to his word, Henry took Emma to the church social in late July, where he danced with her under the stars while the town fiddler played. He introduced her to everyone as his intended, the pride clear in his voice. Some people whispered, scandalized that a widow would remarry so soon, but Emma found she did not care. She was tired of living for other people's opinions. Henry came to her cabin for dinner, bringing fresh beef from the ranch and playing games with Timothy afterward. He fixed the leaky roof she had been struggling with and repaired the broken step on her porch. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give, content with stolen kisses and long conversations on her front porch. In August, he took her to Sacramento for the day, just the two of them. They walked through the shops, and he bought her a new dress, a beautiful blue cotton that matched her eyes. When she protested the expense, he simply said that his future wife deserved pretty things. They ate dinner at a restaurant, a luxury Emma had rarely experienced, and talked until the restaurant staff began giving them pointed looks. On the ride home, Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling utterly content. "I love you," she said. The words surprised her, though she realized they were true. She had been feeling it for weeks but had been too afraid to say it out loud. Henry pulled the wagon to a stop beside the road. "What did you say?" "I love you, Henry Young. I did not think I would ever feel this way again, but I do. I love your kindness and your patience. I love how you are with Timothy. I love that you make me feel like I matter." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, until she was dizzy with want. "I love you too," he said against her lips. "I have loved you since that first day when you stood there selling pies with such determination in your eyes. Then what are we waiting for? Let us get married." Henry pulled back, searching her face. "Are you certain? I do not want you to feel rushed." "I am certain. I want to be your wife. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep in your arms every night. I want Timothy to have a father who will love him. I want to build a life with you. Then marry me, Emma Sawyer. Be my wife, my partner, my love. Let me spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, yes, yes." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Downeyville, with half the town in attendance. Emma wore the blue dress Henry had bought her, and Martha had woven wildflowers into her hair. Timothy stood beside Henry as they exchanged vows, beaming with pride when the preacher said that Henry was now his father. The wedding breakfast was held at the ranch, where tables had been set up in the yard. Emma had spent the previous week baking, creating a towering wedding cake and dozens of pies for the guests. The ranch hands formed a band of sorts, with one man on fiddle, another on banjo, and Charlie surprising everyone with a harmonica. Henry danced with Emma as the sun climbed higher, holding her close and whispering all the things he planned to do to make her happy. She blushed and laughed, feeling more herself than she had in years. When the guests finally departed in the late afternoon, Henry carried Emma over the threshold of the ranch house, which was now her house too. He had given her a tour weeks earlier, but everything felt different now. This was home. He set her down in the bedroom, a large space with windows overlooking the pastures. The bed was covered in a quilt that Henry's mother had made, and fresh flowers sat on the dresser. "I know you might be nervous," he said gently. "We can wait if you need to." Emma shook her head. "I do not want to wait. I want you, Henry, all of you." He kissed her then, slow and deep, his hands moving to the buttons of her dress. She helped him, fingers trembling slightly as she undid his shirt. When they finally came together, skin against skin, Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks. This was nothing like her experiences with James, which had been quick and perfunctory at best, painful at worst. Henry touched her as though she were precious, taking his time, making sure she felt pleasure before seeking his own. Afterward they lay tangled together, Emma's head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "That was," she began, then stopped, not sure how to put it into words. "Perfect," Henry finished. "You are perfect." She smiled against his skin. "I was going to say unexpected." "I did not know it could be like that." His arms tightened around her. "It can be like that every time if we want it to be. We have the rest of our lives to figure each other out." Life at the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Emma continued to bake, now supplying not just the Double Y but 3 other ranches in the area. The extra income allowed her to hire 2 women from town to help with the work, which gave her more time to focus on her new family. Timothy thrived in his new home. Henry taught him to ride and rope, to mend fences and care for cattle. The boy grew stronger and more confident, his laughter a constant presence around the ranch. He started calling Henry father within a month, and the first time he did it, Emma saw tears in her husband's eyes. Martha became like a mother to Emma, teaching her the ins and outs of running a household of this size. The 2 women worked side by side in the kitchen, talking about everything and nothing. Martha shared stories about Henry's childhood, painting a picture of a boy who had been kind and hardworking even then. The ranch hands accepted Emma as the lady of the house without question. She made sure they were well fed, tended to minor injuries and illnesses, and remembered important details about their lives. In return, they were fiercely protective of her and Timothy, treating them both as family. In October, Emma realized her monthly courses were late. She waited another week, not daring to hope before mentioning it to Martha. The older woman's face lit up. "Oh, my dear, how wonderful! I am not certain yet. I do not want to tell Henry until I am sure." But Martha was right. By November there was no doubt. Emma was carrying Henry's child. She told him one evening after dinner when they were alone in their bedroom, "I have something to tell you." He looked up from the book he was reading, immediately attentive. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. Quite the opposite, actually." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Henry just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around the room. "Careful," she said, laughing. "You will make me dizzy." He set her down gently, then dropped to his knees, pressing his ear against her stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "This is your father. I cannot wait to meet you." Emma ran her fingers through his hair, overwhelmed with love for this man who was so unabashedly joyful about their growing family. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Emma felt well, if a bit tired, and she continued baking through the winter months. Henry was attentive to the point of being overprotective, always making sure she did not lift anything too heavy or work too long. Martha fussed over her constantly, preparing special foods and making sure she rested enough. Timothy was excited about becoming a big brother. He helped Emma knit tiny clothes and build a cradle with Henry. The boy had grown so much in the past year, no longer the quiet, anxious child who had watched his mother struggle. He was happy and secure, exactly as a child should be. In early April of 1873, Emma went into labor. Martha sent one of the hands for the doctor in town while she helped Emma into bed. Henry paced the hallway outside, refusing to leave even though it was not considered proper for husbands to be present during childbirth. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Emma was exhausted, drenched in sweat, and ready to give up when Martha told her to push one more time. She gathered her remaining strength and bore down, and suddenly there was a sharp cry filling the room. "It is a boy," the doctor announced, holding up a squalling, red-faced infant. Martha cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a blanket before placing him in Emma's arms. She looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect features, and felt her heart overflow. He had Henry's blue eyes and a shock of dark hair. "He is beautiful," she whispered. The door burst open and Henry rushed in, propriety forgotten. He stopped beside the bed, staring down at his son with wonder. "Emma, you did it. You gave me a son." "We made him together," she corrected, smiling tiredly. "Would you like to hold him?" Henry took the baby with careful hands, cradling him against his chest. "Hello, little one. I am your father, and that remarkable woman there is your mother. You are the luckiest boy in the world." They named him James Henry Young after both their fathers. Timothy was allowed in to meet his new brother, and he touched the baby's tiny hand with reverent gentleness. "I will protect him," the boy declared solemnly. "I will be the best big brother ever." "I know you will," Emma said, pulling Timothy close with her free arm. The months that followed were exhausting but joyful. Baby James was a good sleeper, thank goodness, and he grew plump and healthy on Emma's milk. Henry was a doting father, getting up with Emma in the night and walking the floor with James when he was fussy. He changed diapers without complaint and could soothe the baby as well as Emma could. By James's first birthday, in April of 1874, the ranch was more prosperous than ever. Henry had expanded his herd and bought additional land. Emma's baking business was so successful that she had 4 women working for her now, and they were supplying ranches as far as 50 miles away. She had even begun selling her pies at the general store in town, where they sold out within hours. On a warm evening in May, Emma stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun set over the pastures. James was asleep in her arms, and Timothy was helping Henry bring the horses in for the night. She thought about where she had been 2 years ago, selling pies on the street corner, desperate and afraid. She thought about how different her life was now, how full of love and purpose. Henry came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. Nothing. How lucky I am." "We are the lucky ones, Emma. You have made this house a home. You have given me a family I never thought I would have." She turned in his arms, careful not to wake the baby. "Do you ever regret it?" "Taking on a widow and her child?" "Never. Not for a single moment. He kissed her forehead. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Over the next few years, their family continued to grow. In 1875, Emma gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah, after Henry's almost bride, because Emma believed in honoring the paths not taken. Sarah had Emma's curly hair and a disposition as sweet as honey. 2 years later came another boy, Thomas, who was loud and energetic from the moment he entered the world. The ranch house rang with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Timothy grew into a fine young man who worked alongside Henry, learning everything about ranching. He had a gift with horses and talked about starting his own breeding program someday. James was curious and gentle, always asking questions and wanting to help his mother bake. Sarah was fearless, following her brothers everywhere and demanding to do everything they did. Thomas was still too young to show much personality beyond his love of noise and mischief. Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep in the winter of 1878. The whole town mourned her, but no one more than Emma, who had come to love her like a mother. They buried her on the ranch, on a hill overlooking the pastures she had loved. She was happy here, Henry said, holding Emma as she cried. She told me once that watching our family grow was the greatest joy of her later years. Emma nodded, wiping her tears. I will miss her so much. She knew that. She also knew you would be fine without her. You are stronger than you think, Emma. Life moved forward as it always does. Timothy married a sweet girl from town named Catherine in 1880 when he was 18 and she was 17. They built a house on the ranch property, and Catherine quickly became another daughter to Emma. The young couple had their first child, a girl named Emma after her grandmother, in 1881. Watching Timothy with his own daughter, seeing the tenderness in his eyes, Emma felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had broken the cycle of her unhappy first marriage, had shown her son what love could look like. He would be a good husband and father, she had no doubt. Henry's hair was starting to gray at the temples, and Emma found she loved him even more than she had on their wedding day. They had built a life together, weathering droughts and hard winters, celebrating births and mourning losses. Their love had deepened and matured, becoming something solid and unshakable. On their 10th wedding anniversary in September of 1883, Henry surprised her with a trip to San Francisco, just the two of them. They left the children with Timothy and Catherine and spent 3 days exploring the city, eating at fine restaurants and walking along the waterfront. On their last evening, Henry took her to a jewelry store and bought her a necklace with a sapphire pendant. Blue like your eyes, he said, fastening it around her neck. Emma looked at her reflection in the store mirror. She was 35 now, with lines around her eyes and silver threads in her hair, but she looked happy, she realized. Truly happy. You remember when you first bought my pies? She asked as they walked back to their hotel. How could I forget? You looked so fierce and vulnerable at the same time. I knew right then that I was in trouble. I thought you were just being kind. I never imagined this. She gestured broadly, encompassing not just the city but their entire life together. I bought those pies because they gave me an excuse to talk to you. I would have kept buying them forever if that was what it took. You bought all of them, she said, smiling. All my pies and my heart. Best purchase I ever made. They made love that night in their hotel room, taking their time, savoring each other. Afterward, Emma lay in Henry's arms, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the city outside their window. I want to grow old with you, she said. I want to watch our children have children and sit on the porch together when we are too old to work. We will, Henry promised. I am going to love you until my last breath, Emma Young. They returned to the ranch refreshed and more in love than ever. The years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren and new challenges. The ranch weathered economic depressions and changing times. Henry and Emma adapted, diversifying their income and helping their children build their own futures. James decided he wanted to be a doctor and went east to medical school in 1890. Emma was proud but missed him terribly. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son and stayed close to home, much to Emma's relief. Thomas followed in Timothy's footsteps, working the ranch and showing a talent for business that helped keep the operation profitable. By 1895, Emma was 47 years old and a grandmother 6 times over. Her baking business had evolved into a commercial bakery in town, run by women she had trained. She still baked for pleasure, but the daily grind of production was behind her. One quiet evening in late summer, she and Henry sat on the porch swing, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. His hair was white now, her streaked with silver. Their hands, clasped together, were marked with age spots and scars from decades of work. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Emma asked. "When I was selling pies in town. All the time, I think about how close I came to just riding past. I almost did not stop." "What made you?" He thought about it. "You did. Something about you called to me. It was like I recognized you, even though we had never met. Like my soul knew yours." Emma rested her head on his shoulder. "I am so grateful you stopped. I cannot imagine my life without you." "You never have to," Henry said, kissing the top of her head. "I am not going anywhere." And he did not for many years. They grew old together on the ranch they loved, surrounded by children and grandchildren and eventually great-grandchildren. Emma continued to bake, though now it was just for family gatherings and special occasions. Her pies became legendary, the recipes passed down through generations. When people asked Emma about her life, about how she went from desperate widow to matriarch of one of the most successful ranches in the region, she always gave the same answer. "I baked pies to survive," she would say. "But a good man bought them all, and along with them he bought my heart. The rest was just building a life together one day at a time." Henry always laughed when she said it. "You make it sound so simple." "It was simple," she would insist. "We loved each other." Everything else followed from that. On Emma's 65th birthday in 1913, the family threw a celebration that filled the ranch house to bursting. 4 children, 15 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren gathered to honor her. The table was laden with pies, all made from her recipes, each one a testament to where their family had begun. Henry stood to make a toast, his hand shaking slightly as he raised his glass. He was 80 years old now, his body frail but his mind still sharp. "To my wife," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "You took a chance on a rancher who bought too many pies. You gave me a family, a home, a reason to wake up smiling every morning. You are the best thing in my life, Emma Sawyer Young. Here is to many more years together." "To Emma," the room chorused, raising their glasses. She looked around at all the faces, at the life she had created, and felt such overwhelming gratitude. She had survived loss and poverty, had rebuilt herself from nothing. And now here she was, surrounded by love, by family, by purpose. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Emma and Henry sat alone in the quiet house. "Tired?" Henry asked. "Wonderfully so," she replied. "It was a perfect day. They are all perfect with you." She moved closer to him on the sofa, fitting herself against his side the way she had done for 40 years. "Thank you for buying my pies, Henry Young. Thank you for selling them, Emma Young." They sat in comfortable silence, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful. Outside, the wind moved through the oak trees, and the stars wheeled overhead, and the ranch settled in for another peaceful night. The story of how Emma had sold pies to survive, and how Henry had bought them all along with her heart, became family legend. Their great-grandchildren would ask to hear it again and again, never tiring of the tale. And Emma would tell it, adding small details each time, making sure they understood the important parts. "Love is not always grand gestures," she would say. "Sometimes it is just showing up. It is buying pies you do not really need because you want to help. It is being patient when someone is afraid. It is building something together, day by day, choice by choice. That is the real love story." Henry passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1918 at the age of 85. Emma held his hand as he went, whispering all the things she loved about him, making sure he left this world knowing how cherished he was. She mourned him deeply, but without regret. They had been married for 43 years, and every one of those years had been a gift. She lived another 7 years, staying on the ranch that had been her home for so long. Her children worried about her being alone, but Emma insisted she was fine. The ranch was full of memories, full of Henry, and she wanted to be nowhere else. She passed away in her sleep in the summer of 1925, at the age of 77. They buried her next to Henry on the hill overlooking the pastures, under an oak tree where they had often sat together. The headstone was simple: Emma Young, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. But the legacy she left was anything but simple. She had shown her children and grandchildren what it meant to be resilient, to choose love even when you are afraid, to build something meaningful out of nothing but hard work and hope. The bakery in town still operated under her name, and her recipes were still used. The ranch continued to prosper under the care of her descendants. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind was just right, the family members who lived on the ranch swore they could smell apple pie baking, could almost see two figures sitting on the porch swing, holding hands and watching the sunset. Whether it was imagination or something more, no one could say. But it was comforting to think that Emma and Henry were still there, still together, still in love. Their story was proof that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the most ordinary moments. A widow selling pies. A rancher who bought them all. Two lonely people who found in each other exactly what they needed. It was simple and profound, heartbreaking and beautiful, ending exactly as it should, with a lifetime of love and a family that would carry that love forward for generations to come. The Double Y Ranch still stood, a testament to what Henry and Emma had built together. The main house had been expanded over the years, but the original structure remained, including the kitchen where Emma had baked countless pies. The porch swing where they had spent so many evenings was carefully maintained, repainted each spring. The hill where they were buried was planted with wildflowers, and family members made regular pilgrimages to sit and talk to them, sharing news and seeking advice from beyond the grave. On the anniversary of their wedding each year, the family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. They ate pie, of course, made from Emma's recipes. They told stories about Henry and Emma, keeping their memory alive. The younger generations learned about the woman who had sold pies to survive and the man who had bought them all, along with her heart. They learned that love was not always easy, but it was always worth it. That building a life together required patience and compromise and choosing each other, over and over again. The story of Emma and Henry Young became more than just family history. It became a guiding principle, a reminder of what really mattered. When times were hard, they remembered how Emma had persevered through poverty and loss. When relationships were strained, they remembered how Henry had been patient and kind. When fear threatened to hold them back, they remembered how both Emma and Henry had been brave enough to take a chance on love. And so the legacy lived on, not just in the land or the business or the recipes, but in the hearts of all those who came after. Emma had wanted to survive, and she had. But more than that, she had thrived. She had loved and been loved. She had created a family that would endure long after she was gone. She had turned a simple basket of pies into a love story for the ages, proving that sometimes the best things in life begin with a single act of courage, a willingness to hope, and the good fortune to meet someone who sees your worth, even when you have forgotten it yourself. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the money or the success or even the beautiful ranch house. It was the love between Emma and Henry, strong enough to weather any storm, the love they had for their children and grandchildren. The love that had started with a simple transaction on a dusty street in Downeyville, California, in 1872, and had grown into something that would outlast them both. It was a reminder that love could be found in the most unexpected places, that it was never too late for a new beginning, that the right person could change everything. Emma had thought she was just selling pies, but she had been offering so much more. And Henry, wise enough to recognize it, had bought not just her baked goods but her heart, her future, her dreams. Together, they had built something beautiful. Together, they had created a love story that would be told and retold for generations. Together, they had proved that sometimes all you need is one person who believes in you, who sees past your circumstances to the person you truly are, who is willing to take a chance on love even when it seems impossible. That was the real story of Emma and Henry Young. A story of pies and persistence, of patience and passion, of two people who found each other when they needed it most and held on tight. A story that began with survival and ended with legacy. A story, above all, of love.